I've been through the rain and I weathered the storm, I'm not looking to stop. My God sent the angels, I'm good when I move like I move with the mob. Tears in the valley, this life is a jungle, I pray to the top. Life is a marathon, I'm running to them, I'm shaking off weights and I'm done with the fear.
This is for the kingdom builders, the entrepreneurs who are called to make an impact bigger than just money alone. The ones who are overcoming trials and turning past failures into future success stories. It's for the bold who refuse to let fear overcome faith. This is Impact Kingdom. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Impact Podcast. Super excited for this one. So normally you guys have just saw me on these things, just giving some lessons, giving some value as I hopefully can. But this time I want to switch it up. So today I want to bring on a guest. We have Mr. Adam Luckey here. Adam, how you doing?
What's up? Good, man. Looking forward to jumping in.
Excellent. Dude, same here. So I'm excited, guys, to share with you Adam Luckey. So Adam's journey it's pretty funny, man. We're kind of like twins in this whole journey of you mentioned some things like past, right, the college life, then going into being a trainer, owning a gym, and now you own a marketing agency. And I feel like it mirrors perfectly of like the journey I followed as well. It's like literally that exact same story, like crazy college kid, became a personal trainer because it was the next thing to do. Ended up opening up a gym and then now have a marketing agency as well. So I'm super excited to share that.
Yeah.
So we'll dive into the business aspect as well. But most importantly, we're going to talk about how you do faith and business together as well.
Sounds good,
All right.
man.
So with that being said, man, tell us, if you don't mind, like start with your testimony. Like tell us kind of how did you come to Christ like as a kid? Was it in college? Walk us through, your story there.
Yeah, man. So I grew up Christian. My dad was always a believer and into the supernatural as well, like the element of charismatic side of church. So he would follow people like Kim Clement, these prophets, and he finds himself very prophetic. Intuitively, like hearing God is pretty normal for him. So I kind of grew up in that dynamic of going to church, and I was healed when I was younger, like supernatural healing type stuff. I fell on a stick when I was hiking, and I fractured my eye bone. I was probably like 10 or so, somewhere around there. And I was cross-eyed. I was cross-eyed for a while. I had to wear a patch on my eye, and the doctor said I would have to wear these like thick corrective glasses for like a couple years to get my eyes back to go back to normal. And I remember my dad and my parents, they took me to church and they had this guy lay hands on me and they just believed that, that I would be healed. So I didn't know. I'm like, cool. Nothing happened instantaneously, but it was like, I don't know if it was a few days later, we were driving to the doctor and then I just remember all of a sudden I could just see straight. It's just, my parents started freaking out, dude. And so that was awesome. And that was really my first experience with the gospel in the sense of like, dude, this stuff's real. Like, it's not just about, the religious stuff. So I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful my parents gave me those roots. But, growing up, my parents divorced. My dad divorced a few times. So probably about the second divorce when I was 16, just kind of went off and did my own thing. Just followed the good old lust of the flesh and chasing the girls. That's where I found my identity. And that's where I found the comfort because, for me personally, I didn't have a mom growing up really. Like my parents split up when I was 2. So didn't really have the mother figure. I lived with my dad. So it was always that big gaping hole trying to find that in other women. So similar to your story, I think you're talking about crazy college kid. That's it. That's the route I ended up going down. But yeah, that has only so much fulfillment. And about this time, I went and got a scholarship to play football in Minnesota. Long story short, and that with the record stuff, I escaped a lot of the trouble I could have been in my hometown in Southern California. It's like let me go to Minnesota. I had 2 options of scholarships. I can go to Missouri or Minnesota. It's like I'm going to Minnesota. I took this D2 scholarship and went out there, and it's total culture shock. But was playing football and all that was my identity as well. Like I was just wrapped up in this is who I am. Like I'm football. So my confidence was always just, am I playing good or not? And I was just so attached to that. and it just came to a point where I was just like, man, I'm just over it all. Like, I gotta change something. Like, this is terrible. Life is not fulfilling. Like, there's got to be more to this. I was, had a girlfriend at that time for a year, but we ended up breaking up. So those pivotal moments of like deep pain of breakups can really be a good catalyst, right, for spiritual awakening. So all at that same time, I was like, man, I'm done with football, quit, and broke up with the girlfriend, and just started really seeking the Lord. Just started praying, like, what am I here for? Like, what is this all about? There's got to be more to this, and just praying that over a week's period, and I just remember one night having a really significant dream, having a significant encounter with the Lord, in my dream. And it was an answer to that prayer. The dream was pretty crazy, but it was like a marking moment where I won't go into all the details of the dream just for time's sake, but I basically woke up from the dream, and in that dream he basically was like, dude, I called you. Like, I've called you as my own. I've called you to speak my word. And I woke up from that dream. It was just like this tangible electricity in the room. I've never, experienced anything like that up until that point in time. I was just like, dude, what? It's just like energy, pure energy in the room. And I
Yeah.
was like, and I just heard this voice in my spirit, that inner voice, like, yeah, I've called you. Like, this is who you are. Like I've called you to be mine and to speak my word. So it's like a combination thing of like, this is what you're here to do. Like, you're here to speak my word. And that can mean so many things, right? As I've, decades later. But
Yep.
that was really where things started changing, and I started following the Lord actually, and not just say, because up until that point, I still considered myself a Christian, an unbelieving Christian,
Yeah.
but just started really seeking out for my own and like, what's going on here, and God just really started getting a hold of me. Started listening to some of the people my dad listened to, like Kim Clement, and just having my own little church sessions in my room, and would just turn worship music on, and it was just like a cleansing time for weeks of just like crying and like, getting rid of porn. I'm like, I remember reading in the Bible like, oh man, you lust after a woman, dang, that's going to be hard, Lord. Dang. You even lust after a woman, like you've already committed adultery in your heart. I'm like, oof, all right, well, help me out here. So
Yep.
just giving up all the things that I know how to do, in my own strength, and but there was a lot of fruit that came of it, and just started really getting on fire, and just talking to everybody about the Lord. When you're fresh on fire, that's really, you can't help yourself. Like, you feel like you've been
Yeah.
unplugged from the matrix, right? So you want to tell everybody.
Exactly. You
So
start
that's really,
sharing, and it's so powerful, man. It's the prodigal son story, right? It's that being raised. And that was a little bit of my journey as well, where it's like raised Christian. We were always at church. It was just something that we always did. And so if someone would have asked me in middle school and college and all these things if I was a Christian, I definitely would have said yes. But
yeah.
the lifestyle didn't reflect it. And it's like it's that prodigal son story. It sounds like for you of that being raised there, but kind of leaving, right? Leaving that foundation, going off, like like how you said, like chasing the flesh in a sense, right? Living a life of the flesh. Now, one thing I think can be really tough, and we'll dive into your story of like how you go from that, right, to being a business owner, multiple businesses. But how did you deal with those labels from that time, right? Because you hear the labels of, I know you mentioned you had a record as well. So you hear the labels of like, man, you're a bad kid, or you're doing this, or the labels that maybe you're even giving yourself. Like, how did you shed those? Like, how did you deal with having those labels on you from your past growing up?
Yeah, like, so, like, the labels as far as like the identity of like what I took on up until that point, or like how that helped
Yeah.
transition into business and all that as well. Is that what you're saying?
More so of like shedding the labels that maybe you took on, or maybe you didn't have that, right? But
Yeah.
I know for me, I
Yeah.
would experience a lot of kind of guilt, shame, like,
Oh,
man,
totally.
I've done drugs, or I've done this, or I hurt these people, and I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not some leader. And so I had those labels I had to deal with. I was, curious if you had the same thing.
Yeah, no, 100%. Always, I think, labels, limiting beliefs, identity, what you ascribe to yourself based on your past. I think all of those things for sure. Yeah, I think that's part of renewing the mind, right? I think that's a ongoing life process, but for sure I had a lot of condemnation with just my past and um, a lot of guilt as well. I think that was just more so as I started to pursue Christ, a lot of guilt and shame, like I'm just not good enough. Like I can't do
Yeah.
this. Like you get on fire at first, but you find out if you what you start in the spirit, if you try to, continue in the flesh and in your own effort and religious striving, and I was very zealous, so I was fasting a lot, but it always just felt like it's not enough. So I always felt I took that personal, like, man, I just can't. Um, I'm just not spiritual enough. Like I don't know what it is, but it was just always that feeling. I think men can relate to that um, as well. But I think the message of grace really helped me understand that my identity is a son. So just renewing my mind, like as an ongoing process, like he would just remind me, like, dude, like you're a son. You're not an orphan. One, like this isn't your identity. Like what you've done isn't your identity. Your old sin is not your identity. My family just got home, so my daughter might try to break the lock and come in. But
No worries.
just realizing that the message of the gospel, like he who knew no sin became sin for us, that we can become that we who knew no righteousness can become the righteousness of God. So that really just wrecked my world like that. Like wow, so it's not about what I don't live according to what I can do, but I live according to what he has done. That he literally became my sin. And sin can mean a lot of things. Part of the definition is like missing the mark, like
Yeah.
constantly feeling like you're missing the mark. So that means we're living in the flesh. If we're always feeling like we're missing the mark, we're not good enough. That's because we're not. We're not supposed to be. We're not supposed to be. Be able to do it all on our own. So it's that partnership of in relationship to grace of like, no, I'm a son. I'm a beloved son, and that's where I have to anchor myself, and everything else will fall into alignment. Really, does that make sense? I know I rambled a little bit there.
It, it does. Paul talks about in Romans, all the renewing of your mind. It's probably one of my favorite verses because it's that transformation, right? And the transformation is that way you can, have the wisdom to understand God's will, right? Which is powerful. And it kind of brings to that point in your story where it's like, so you're having this renewing of mind, right? You go deep, and I love that you go faith first because for me, I went personal development first, and there was a lot of value out of it. But as you mentioned, right, you're always going to fail when you're with the flesh, and I think personal development for a lot of us as entrepreneurs can sometimes get us in the flesh, right? It's like it
Mm-hmm.
becomes our plan, our goal, our actions, and don't get me wrong, like a lot of those things have a place, like they have a place of learning how to be better in the world here, but I like that you went the spiritual route first, and that's where you saw a lot of the renewing your mind. So you're in this
Yeah.
place, you're right. You break up with a girlfriend, you quit football. It sounds like you went back home, and so how does how tell us like how do you go from there to the first business?
Yeah, man. I mean, um, graduated college from Minnesota, moved home, wanted to just get going in life and start making money. And um, I interviewed for some places, got rejected because I had a past record. And like I was telling you earlier, like that was one of the best things that happened to me because right after that, I was working out with my old trainer and he planted the seed. He's like, hey, have you ever thought about being a trainer? And that wasn't something I never thought about. And the Lord was definitely on it. Because literally the same day I was out shopping somewhere and some random lady I was talking to was just like, you ever thought about being a trainer? I'm like, okay, there's got to be something here. Two people on the same day. So I just started thinking about the idea. I'm like, okay, that must be the Lord. So I went and started researching that path of being a trainer. But I didn't really want to work for somebody else. Classic entrepreneur, trying to, you know, I want the freedom. I want the freedom. I want to be able to work for myself. So I ended up starting a gym. I got into Fit Body Bootcamp franchise before it was a franchise, and just got dialed in. I just believe, you know, you need mentors, people that have gone before you and have done what you want to do. Like that's a good principle. Just follow them. So I got in with Fit Body Bootcamp, and they gave me the tools. I just started training clients for free. Really, I rented space from a gymnastics center, and that was like their model. Like, go to a gymnastics center, just rent space from them in the mornings, do a boot camp, start training people for free, and then go spread the word. And that's what I did. So did that for a couple years, and started just, I was probably 25 or so, 20, yeah, no, 24. And it was fun. Started making some money. I remember making my first $1,000. Like, that was a life changing. Someone paid me $1,000. Like, wow, this thing's this. I'm
Yep.
onto something here. This is nice. This is nice. Don't have to work for anybody else. You know, I could move out of my parents' place. You know, had a little sense of freedom and independence. Um, so yeah, that set me on the path, man, of entrepreneurship, and that's really how I got started into the gym world.
And so you're going into that world, right? You go from post college, you start your first business, and I'm just thinking back to like when I opened up the gym the first time, and like just how crazy a world that was, right? Like it's early mornings, late nights.
Oh man.
You're operating. I'm not sure when you got staff, but how was that? Like, tell us a little bit more about like that beginning phase of running the business. Did you end up getting staff? How did you still make sure that was your faith a priority during that time, or were you just straight head down? Business became the idol. Like what did that
Yeah.
look like?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I think at that point in time, I did slip back into some old habits like smoking weed. That those things are, it's just real life. Like, you get on fire for the Lord, and then you can get sucked back into the world if you're not careful. And um, girls ended up slipping back into those old habits as well. But the business did become the main focus, and I always knew, for me, I didn't want to come in here as just like a trainer. Like, I wanted to build a business. Like, I wanted to hire people. I wanted freedom. I know you're going to need a team for that. So pretty quick, I hired another trainer within a few months, um, to take those morning sessions, those 4 a.m. sessions that were rough. I did those
Yep.
for a while. I don't think it's 3 months. I think it was about, I don't know, maybe 6 months into the running the gym. Can't remember, but it was somewhat soon, where I got a trainer on pretty quick, and then hired an admin person to handle the billing, and so I can focus on sales. So yeah, took the advice of people like Bedros, these mentors, of like, hire people and focus on sales. So I did that, and um, yeah, that's really hired pretty quick, and I always had the mindset of I wanted to build a team and have that sense of freedom. I knew I wanted to travel and do other things, and so I didn't come in blind, where unfortunately, a lot of fitness professionals, they don't understand that it's going to be a business, and you're not just going to be following your passion of helping people, transform. Like, there's going to be a lot of work on the business side. So
Absolutely. And there's so much though. I mean, there's two things I would love to unpack here. And the first one is I appreciate your honesty about getting back to, you start smoking weed again, girls, business becomes kind of the main focus, because that's really how it works, right? It's not just like this straight path up after you accept your
yeah,
faith and you go hard in your
I'm
faith,
perfect now.
right? Yeah, exactly. I wish it was that easy, right? But
Yeah,
we both feel like things
yeah,
take, that takes a while, becoming more like Christ, it's the thing we do until we die.
yeah,
And what do you think stemmed, like what caused you to start smoking weed again, for example?
yeah, man. I think it's just such a habit of I enjoy the creativity of, that space. For me, it's different for everybody. Like, alcohol was never a big deal for me. I never liked it. Weed was
Yeah.
always a pull, a draw. It became an idol. Like, that's where, when I'm feeling stressed, or when I want to tap into that place of creativity and that feeling. I like being high. Let's be real. Like, it's a good feeling for me.
Yep.
And I wasn't finding that anywhere else. Like, that was just my source. So, understanding that became an idol, and realizing at some point I came to realize that, there's no high like the most high, in a sense, right? Like, in that relationship and with the abiding, that whole message of abiding in Christ, I started reading these old these old mystics, like these old saints that would just practice the presence, practicing the presence of just meditation and tapping into that place of just being in his presence. Being in his presence is fullness of joy. Right? So that scripture, finding the reality in that, really helped me get off of those habits, and that's really where it all stemmed from. Really, it's just encountering God more, like the tangible presence. Religion ain't gonna do it for you. I mean, I'm very anti-religion in the sense of anti-rules. So I was never one to just do something because I was told to, or it's the right thing to do. I'm
Yeah.
like, where's the power? Where's the real stuff? Like, if it makes a difference, like, where are the results? And just the encounters I had with him, like in that secret place of in prayer, and just getting rocked by his presence and his love, and feeling that, like, tangibly. Like, that does something to your heart, that changes you. That makes you more like him. So that's really what helped me out of that.
And I appreciate the realness here because the young entrepreneur watching this, right? Like they're going to go through something that pulls them in, especially when you first start a business. For me personally, I would go probably 3 weeks straight of just grinding, right? 3 weeks straight of just like work, 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 sales appointments. You're doing your admin work as well. You're doing your cleaning if you have a brick and mortar location. You're doing all these different tasks. And so you're grinding yourself through. And then that stress starts to build. And for me, my release became through, weekend binges, right? So
Yeah.
I was over in Dallas, Texas. So I drive out to Austin, Texas. I had a friend there that I would always get in trouble with in high school. And I'd be like on the straight and narrow for like 3 weeks straight. And then we'll just go there and just like binge drink, right? And like just, get drunk, party, all that stuff there. And then it was almost like the cycle that happened, right? So I would do that, then feel a little bit of guilt, come back, grind my face off again, and the next it's like 2 3 weeks later I'm off with another buddy like getting drunk somewhere. And so it was like those ebbs and flows, and it wasn't until I started to realize how it was my coping mechanism for dealing with the stress of business.
Mhm.
And then it started, it got for me, and it was a long journey of this, of like realizing like, man, my coping mechanism, it was first alcohol, then it became weed, then it became, for me, porn, and all these different things. And it became really clear to me that, man, I was running away from God in times of stress, when that's the place that's the promise we get, right? The promise from
Right.
Jesus is that we will have peace. It's not that things are perfect and less stressful, but it's the promise that like if we go to him first, we'll have peace through it.
Come
And
on,
I think this is big in business because business is the opposite of peace, right? Like it's chaos.
dude.
It's chaotic.
Totally,
And
man. It's
so
that
how
shame.
do you find yourself dealing with that? Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so how do you find yourself dealing with the chaos of business now? Do you have a better way of coping with it? Is that, what's kind of your mechanism right now for when you deal with a little bit of stress, a bad sales
Yeah,
week or something like that in your life now?
that's good stuff, man. That's good stuff. I think it's what drives people away. What drove me away was the shame and the guilt, and then you feel like you want to hide, and then it's like the opposite. Like, God's just like, hey, come to me, man. I'm not your angry dad that's gonna smash you because you made mistakes, and you keep making mistakes, and you keep making mistakes. He's so patient and kind. Like, I've found that, to be what helps me come back to him. It's like, I can't scare him away. Like, I have my anger issues. I've cussed at him, and I've gone on walk and just like freak out on him. I remember one time specifically, just like so afraid to be honest with God, and it just kept me in a place of shame. But one time I was just like, "F this!" I just like went off on him and just like vented, uh, like just all the silly stuff we do, as humans. They're just blaming him for everything, and it's just funny now. But then after I got done, he's like, "I'm still here. Like you can't scare me away." Because like that's my trigger, like my anger. When I get angry, like it's to push people away, and I would rage on people, and it's like that can always cause people to go away from me. But it's his kindness that leads us to repentance. That's the truth, and that's what's anchored me in him. And now I feel like I still stumble. A righteous man may fall 7 times, right? But he'll get back up again, and but it's not about perfection. It's about progress. I'm light years ahead of where I was in terms of my maturity and growth because he's faithful. He who started the work, right? He's faithful to complete it in us. And the more I
Yeah.
understand that it's not going to be as a result from my striving in a sense, but it's his grace in operation through me. And I just, I got to cooperate with that, of course. But in terms of practicality these days, taking walks are like life, you know, walks with the Lord, like having that quiet time in the morning. Like I can't live without that. The days that I do miss it, I can tell I'm just not as good of a father. I'm not as good of a person. I'm more short. I'm not tapped into his presence. I'm more easily a target for the devil and his little fiery arrows he likes to throw at us of doubt and or whatever it is. So you got to get your mind right, and that morning time is huge for me. Going on, thankfully, I live right next to these walking trails, which is a dream come true. I've always wanted to live next to walking trails because my wife and I both just really love taking walks. So yeah, that habit, man, is just life. Being able to pray and just talk to God and meditate on things, focus on my goals for the day. Just a combination of all of it, really. That's my go-to. That's my go-to right there.
And that's powerful because especially in a day and age now where it seems like, if you're an entrepreneur and you're a young entrepreneur and you're scrolling through Facebook, Instagram, things like that, you're constantly seeing all these things about, morning routines, right? You see the ice baths, cold showers, do your sauna work, do your breath meditation, do your Wim Hof, breathing exercise. And you see all these different things. And so I'm very leery. I lean more on the side of the best routine is the one that gets your work done, right?
Right.
But the one thing I will say that is a drastic difference, and I think we're called to, and this is the difference between being a faith-led entrepreneur and just being just a regular entrepreneur, is that sacrifice of putting Christ first in the morning, right? It's like,
For sure.
because the first thing, I mean, I know for me at least, the first thing I want to do in the morning is look at my phone and look at Slack and see what happened the day, what came in overnight, check my work email, right? Like I have this drive because business you can never turn it off, right? Like it's always there, in the back of your head, it's always happening. And so there's this temptation to want to put that first. But I've noticed that when I fight that temptation, and the first thing I do is put Christ first, the schedule could be the same as any other day, but it's a completely different day, right? Like it's a different
Yeah.
day as you show up as a leader, as a parent, a husband. It's a drastic difference. So if there is one thing where I
Yeah.
would tell a faith-led entrepreneur, like a morning routine, is do whatever you want in the morning, but just make sure it includes something of putting Christ first.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if Christ did it, if Jesus was the one who would withdraw often. I mean, he was the most productive. 3 years he got more done than anybody, but often he would withdraw to be
Yeah,
alone with the Father. So that was his go-to, and
that's,
that's how I roll. I'm like, hey, I ain't got time for that. I need to go be alone right now. So
absolutely.
yeah, I feel you.
So take us through the rest of that journey. So you open up the gym, right? You get it up and running. You have your first team member. Oh, is this the little one?
This is my daughter right here.
What's her name?
This is Journey. She's 3.5. She
Journey.
knows how to pick Journey. Yeah, she knows how to pick my lock. I need to get a
There you
better lock.
go.
She'll just be like, take a
Hi,
little
Journey.
point and just flip it open, and then boom.
I love
She's out.
I love
Yeah,
seeing this. This is what it's about.
that's what it's all about, huh? Being a good
Yeah.
old dad to the kiddos. All right, let's go get mommy, though. I gotta finish this. Later. Babe, can you keep her?
For our audio listeners, Adam's daughter just hopped in the room, picked his lock. The joys of running the business from home. Always a beautiful moment.
Right. She loves to
Oh,
come in and check on Daddy, see how Daddy's doing here. Oh, here she comes again. I might need to recruit.
my daughter's.
Babe. You can, if you have some editing,
I love
get
it.
just
My daughter's. But yeah, we'll cut that snippet out. But yeah, my daughters would do the same thing. I love it. So
right.
Adam, take us through the rest, right? Take us through, I know we're moving fast through it, but you get it into the gym, right? You start that, you get your staff going. How do you go from gym to marketing agency, right? What was the calling there? What changed?
Yeah.
Walk us through the rest of that journey.
Yeah. So the gym, the next phase of really the gym was, um, I just really felt called. I had another significant encounter. Like I went on this trip to Israel with God TV. It was like this awesome trip, life-changing trip for me. It was like a rededication type encounter where I just got lit on fire again for the Lord and just this hunger in me to like give up weed and give up, messing with girls, like to really commit. And I just got lit on fire, man. We had like worship sessions in the city of David. It was just like so beautiful. I remember sitting in the garden tomb and this lady was playing the violin. It was just like a time of taking communion. And I just remember feeling the Lord like come to me and was just like, I did all this for you. Like I did all this for you. Like it just being personal. Like I'm sitting here in the garden tomb, like I think that's where he was buried, or I forget what part it was, but I just started weeping, dude. I just started crying, just bawling right there of just like, wow, like this isn't just a gospel for everybody. Like it's for me personally. And that's God for you. And that just rocked me, man. That just rocked me and I came back on fire and I really started losing interest for business, to be honest. I was just like, when people would come in to do, to sign them up, I would just be more interested in the condition of their soul. I'm like, just start talking about God and, and just like having those conversations of faith and wanting to encourage people spiritually and pray for them. Because I would see this in the Bible, like, hey, lay hands on the sick and they'll recover, right? So I just started,
Yeah.
I started praying for people in my after boot camp sessions. Hey, anybody want prayer? It's just, and people would come up afterward, and it was a really fun season. It was a really cool season of just stepping out of my comfort zone and like, wow, can people really be healed? And I remember one of my clients, she has shoulder issue, and I prayed for her, and like immediately after, she was like, wow, like no, this I actually feel better. I'm just seeing like crazy stuff like that. Like, wow, the Bible's actually true. You can lay hands, and through the power of the Holy Spirit, people can actually experience His healing. Because for me, that verse really stuck out. Like, hey, this isn't about talk. Like the kingdom of God is about power, and it's not just about talking. Like there's tangible power here, and people need to see power. I mean, that's what drew people to Jesus. He went about doing good works and healing the sick, and he said we can do the same kind of stuff. So after that, I partnered with my brother. Long story short, I went off to this ministry school for 3 years, and my brother ran the gym for 3 years. So I was just a passive partner. Literally didn't touch any business stuff for 3 years. Just focused on growing as a disciple. And this school is really cool because it wasn't a traditional religious. It's a Bethel ministry school up here in Redding, Northern California. So it was a it was great. It was all around, just grew in the Lord. and my identity as a son, all that fun stuff. And then so met my wife there at the school. So a lot of good things came out of that. But after 3 years, came back after I got married and jumped back into the gym. Unfortunately, started to tank. You know, because I literally didn't put any effort into it at all. Like my brother just ran it. So came back, started helping, built it back up, and that was around 2019. Desire to sell it because we wanted to move to Austin. So my gym was in Southern California. We felt like God was calling us to Austin to be a part of our friend's church plant. So funny thing is we decided to sell it to my manager. He was running the gym for me at that point. He was like the main head coach guy, you know, trained all the clients. Everyone already loved him already. I was trying to build it not around me, so that was a good thing. It
Yep.
was more around him. He was the face, and at that point, I was just doing marketing and a little bit of sales. I had a salesperson as well, but had a level of freedom. You know, wasn't making millions, but our gym was doing all right, maybe 20 grand a month or so. Um, Signed the contract, sold it to my guy Juan, and this it began a year of crazy times. So we decided to move. We're right away, signed the contract. We bought an RV and we're like, we're going to Austin, and figured we'd have a nice little RV trip in the meantime. But sure enough, never got paid, and he couldn't get the financing. And then basically we were up north visiting her my wife's family in Washington on our little RV trip, and then it just became a nightmare, which is actually hilarious. God's funny because he warned us. We were like literally leaving town, and my wife like had a dream, and in a dream like God told her like, "Hey, you're gonna be thrown for a loop." Like that's all she heard. So she told me, I'm like, that doesn't sound good. I don't like that. Thrown for a loop. But sure enough, it's God's faithfulness because He warns us of things to come, and we ended up doing a physical loop on the map. Like we drove up north, and then we ended up having to drive back right back down in a couple months later because He just started ghosting us. And I was like, dude, I got to go back and take care of the business. I mean, I can't just leave it. So talk about talk about worry and anxiety and battling that on a daily basis. But we really believed you got to come back to what is God saying? Yeah, what is He saying in His Word? But what do you feel like He's saying to you right now? And we just truly believe like God promised us that the business was going to sell, like the gym was going to sell. And it's just everything else was pointing in the opposite, man. And but we came back, and that was a funny day when I showed up to the gym and he saw me. He was quite surprised. He'd been ghosting me, dude. He was ghosting me. So I'm like, hey, I'm back, dude. I'm back. So took over again, and ultimately he brought in a finance his partner, brother-in-law or something to finance, and ended up getting paid. So it all came through. Ended up selling the gym, making some cash and paying off a lot of debt. That was a life-changing moment. Just of those are little testimonies, right? That build your faith. Like God came through, man. It took a year, but hey, the timing wasn't what I wanted. But at that point in time, I bought a course. You know, to answer your question, long-winded, but I bought a Dan Henry course and was really started entertaining the idea of marketing. And I'm like, this online thing is, I've always wanted a business online since I graduated college. I saw all these info products, businesses. I'm like, this could be my entry into online marketing. So got his course, and then I got plugged in with this dude, Mike Barron. I don't know if you heard of Mike Barron.
Right.
Yeah. I got plugged in with Mike Barron. He was like a Grant Cardone clone. He worked for Cardone. He was a sales guy, but he had a program helping agency owners at the time. And yeah, signed up with him, and he helped me get going. And it just started pitching gym launch clients. I know you're a gym launch, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
I just keep share 100. I share 100% of how I got started. I mean, that's where I found my niche because at the time they didn't. Gym Launch was just coaching and consulting. They didn't run ads, so
Exactly.
um, I was never in Gym Launch. My brother was, but we had access to their clients in the Facebook group. So I just started DMing people. Hey, I'll run your ads. And I got a testimonial of a guy that I was helping and just crushed it for him because there's always people that want done for you services. You get all the coaching you want, but you don't want to be managing ads every day yourself. So just
Exactly.
$1,000 a month, and people were loving it. Gym Launch people were loving it. They started sharing it with other Gym Launch people, and until one day I got a cease and desist from Layla. Oh, Layla dropped the old cease and desist, and she was super kind about it. She was super kind, and I was respectful. Like, cool, I definitely won't hit anybody up in your group. Uh, totally understand. But yeah, eventually they added on the agency component, which I didn't do anything wrong, right? I mean, they didn't have that. I wasn't competing with them or anything. So, but yeah, I got up to like 15K a month just from that. So yeah, that's how I got in the whole agency game.
That's so powerful, man. And I think the powerful thing is not necessarily like just it, the biggest thing like I pull from that, and like why I wish a lot of people can take and understand is that when we're called to do this, and you're called as a Christian, if you feel like calling to like, hey, start a business, or you have this path that God set out for you, there's a promise there, right? Now, the promise isn't it's going to be easy or it's going to happen tomorrow, right? It could be, like you said, a full year. You felt this calling to like, hey, we're called to sell this business, and all the signs were against you, but yet you still push through and have that co-op. We're going to trust like this is what God's promising in our lives, and I think it's that's the definition of faith, right? Like faith is not cool. God, you gave me this promise and you gave me this step A to Z plan on how it's going to happen in timeline. It's that I'm going to believe without seeing, and that's where my faith is going to be. And I'm sure there's hard days in there, right, where you feel like you want to give up and whatever. But it's funny to see how that faith, and I see that in your story, man. It's like it's this. I mean, just from the get go of when you came back from college and you felt this calling, and it sounds like you have done a really good job, and obviously no one's perfect, but you've done a really amazing job of when you hear God speaking to you, you act, all right? Like
Yeah.
you act on it, you're preaching on it, like you believe it. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And that's how you make an impact bigger than just business itself.
Yeah. Come on.
So with our last minute here, what I'd love to hear from you is, if you can only put it on a post-it, right? You can really put one lesson down for a young and upcoming entrepreneur who's also a Christian. What would you tell them?
That's good. That's a good one. In a short little snippet, man, ultimately it's like you're not an orphan. You don't have to do it like the world does it. Um, you're a son, and that looks different. Like it's not going to look like the world as long as you stay tapped into the Lord, you stay tapped into Christ, and you abide in Him. He says, "Abide in Me, my words abide in you." Ask anything in my name, and I'll do it for you, so that your joy may be full. That's a combination of a few of those verses in that, uh, paraphrasing what he said, but it's pretty precise, pretty close. So you can trust Him. This is a reminder to myself every day is like it's a battle to do it the world's way or to do it His way as a son, that you have access to the entire kingdom of God. You have all the resources. Like you don't have to give in to the lack and the scarcity mindset that we're all raised in. It's a constant battle to renew our minds to that truth. Um, we don't have to cut corners. We don't have to do all the shady stuff. We learn. I've done some, some of the little cheap marketing tactics. I'm guilty of that, but I just learned more and more of like, the more you know your identity as a son, meaning you have a good dad and he wants you to prosper, like more than you want to prosper. He wants that for you. And just trusting that and just trusting that every step of the way he's going to lead. I think ultimately that's what's helped me in my entrepreneurial journey for sure.
I love it, man. That's the title of our podcast today. You're not an orphan. That is
Hey,
good.
come on.
That's good.
That'll
Adam,
preach.
I appreciate you coming.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate you sharing your story with us today and just, being willing to be vulnerable and just, share what it really looks like, that journey getting started. So, guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Impact Podcast. Don't forget, whether you're listening, hit that subscribe button, download the session here today. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, comment below. And if you are an entrepreneur and you're faith-led and you're making an impact bigger than just money itself in business, I'd love to hear from you and get you on the episode. So until then, until the next one, guys, be blessed and take care.